Greetings and welcome to Let's Talk About Books, baby, where we talk with your favorite LGBTQ authors. This is Anita Kelly, and my guest today is J.M. Redmann. Hello, Jean. How's it going?
Hey, Anita, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Pretty good. It's a little warm, but August does that.
Yes, it does. And speaking of warm, let's talk about your hot new book, Transitory. Transitory is in the Mickey Knight series, no?
Yes, it is. It is the 11th of the Mickey Knight books. Just hot off the presses.
Awesome. And can you tell us a little bit about the storyline and the characters?
Sure. Well, it follows the cases of Mickey Knight, Michelle Mickey Knight, who is a lesbian private investigator set in New Orleans. And like I say, this is the 11th book, and she does function as a private investigator, and it kind of follows two cases. One is grandmother hires her to find a grandson, and that's a lot of what she does in her professional life, is she looks for missing people. But also when she is walking home from a bar, not quite as sober as she should be, she witnesses what the police blow off as an accident. But to Mickey, it looks like a woman was pushed out of one car and then run over by another car, and it looked coordinated to her. She thinks it might be murder. And unfortunately, the woman that was pushed out was a Black transgender woman. So the police are pretty much blowing it off as, oh, that was a sex worker. What do you expect? Customers, yada, yada, yada. And Mickey's like, no, that's not what happened. But recognizes she is in a vulnerable position. She's a lesbian. The cops, as she says, aren't really open to talking about gender and sexuality. And so she's in the dilemma, do I just walk away from it, or do I try and look into it? And so that's what she decides to do. In my day job, my former day job, I'm now retired, as I have rubbed in your face multiple times.
I appreciate it, though.
Yeah, I'll keep doing it, okay?
Okay.
I worked in public health, focusing on HIV/AIDS prevention, and one of the populations, the vulnerable populations we worked with, obviously, gay men, non-binary, injection drug users, but also the transgender community. And I was fortunate to be in the position where my staff were doing intense research into the transgender community in New Orleans, and meeting with multiple members of the group, talking to key informants, and doing focus groups, and doing that. So we had information that gave me, I think, more knowledge of. I don't want to say insight, because I feel that's pretentious. I'm a lesbian. I'm not transgender, but it allowed me to think, well, someone should write stories. Someone should tell these stories. And I wanted to tell a story not for the transgender community, because I'm not, but for the people who are not transgender, to get a better understanding. And maybe if, I was preaching, they would listen in a way. Sometimes people, will not listen. If it's a lesbian saying that don't oppress us, they're like, yeah, it's just you. But, if the straight women are saying, hey, you really shouldn't oppress the lesbian, sometimes they listen a little better. Unfortunately, it is often like that. So I was interested in telling this particular story in this book. So that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah. And, one of the themes that I saw throughout was that theme of, the LGBTQ community not really trusting the police because of their history with them. And, Mickey steps in and, she's saying to herself, this is not my case. This is not my case. Yet she knows that she can do justice for this woman who, whose death she witnessed. And she does just that. It's really a great story from the very beginning. You set up the dynamics really well. Really, it's a fabulous mystery. Kudos to you, Jean.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So, tell us about Mickey Knight. I think you said that this is the 11th book in the series, and how did you get started with Mickey?
Well, I think you have to go back to the time and the way we build on community and the way we learn from each other. And I wrote the first book. I started writing the first book in the late 1980s. I think around 88 was when I started it. God, that seems so long ago. I mean, I'm sure dragons were roaming the earth back then, but there was. First of all, there was a huge sort of revolution in mystery writing. The female PI, Masha Mola, Sarah Paretsky, Sue Grafton, and they were saying, hey, no, we don't need to be the nice little Miss Marples. I mean, I love Miss Marple, but that we could also be the tough PI, the iconic American hero who walks the mean streets. And we were also having the huge burgeoning of the lesbian presses, and particularly the early lesbian mystery writers, Ellen Hart, Catherine Forrest, Barbara Wilson, Sarah Dreyer, and a number of other writers. And suddenly things became possible. And so I was thinking, okay, let me write the book. Or I was just fooling around. I had no intention. If you told me I would be at the 11th book, I would have said, "What are you on? What medication are you on?" But I was just like, okay, let me make a lesbian PI. Let me make, hard boiled. And I also was thinking, let me make her in New Orleans. And I had grown up down around in that area, and knew it pretty well. And, someplace it's not the West Coast or the Northeast. And like I said, I was really fooling around. I kind of thought I would be writing a short story, and then I recognized that the short story, I got more interested in the character, and then I really had to do kind of a deep dive of what would create, who would she be? Mm-hmm. What kind of person would decide that they wanted to be a private eye? And what kind of person would decide that they would be doing that kind of loner type stuff? And so I really had to think about who would she be? What would create the kind of person that looks for justice, that looks for that quest, that's sort of a bit prickly. And, particularly in the first book, she's a bit of an asshole.
Is she?
And I deliberately decided to do that because I felt I wanted her to be complex. I wanted her to be messy. Mm-hmm. And I wanted her to have room where she could grow as a character.
What makes her an asshole?
Some of the way she treats some of her friends. Okay. She's sort of hot and cold, like leave me alone, I can't be bothered. Mm-hmm. That she has dumped a couple people because she was afraid of getting close to them. Mm-hmm. It's that, again, messy and complicated.
Yeah, she sounds like the quintessential PI, right?
Well, yeah, but I wanted to also make her a person. And that creates the mess.
So let's talk about this. Like, how has Mickey grown and changed since you started this series 11 books ago?
Well, I've had to age, so I figured she had to as well.
Oh, and darn.
Yeah.
Don't tell me you're retired again.
I'm sorry?
I said, don't tell me you're retired again.
Yeah. Okay. You did it for me. I don't need to. I started her out. In the first book, she is 29, turning 30, okay. And now I have her in this book. She is in sort of the late 40s, heading, looking 50 is the next big milestone. Okay. So certainly she is aged, and I think she has grown as a person. She's learned to be, I think, a little bit more accepting, and certainly able to look at her faults and her problems and you try to deal with them. I still think she lives kind of a messy life, but I think in some ways, we all run into things that we stumble over and sometimes fall. Mm-hmm. But I think she's certainly grown, mm-hmm. Been able to create more lasting relationships, being able to not, recognize that she needs community as well.
Yeah, it almost sounds like, she matured, right? Those are things that I think we do naturally as we mature. We become more accepting. We look inward and start, kind of taking responsibility for things. Yeah. So how was that for you to do? Was that easy or difficult seriously, 11 books is quite an accomplishment. I think that is just amazing. You should get an award just for that. Like, seriously.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so, like, to take this one character and have them grow and change and develop in 11 books that is quite a feat.
Well, and do I know how I did it? Not really. I think I was interested in her as a character and interested in her as her life. And a lot of times, it's 11 books. She works as a PI. Mm-hmm. And so presumably, we're seeing a few little choice stories here and there, she's working, 12 months a year and we see one story or so. And I tried to pick the ones that in some way resonate with where she is in her life and where she needs to be and things she needs to think about. And that kind of force her to confront where she is, in the fourth book, Lost Daughters. She is hired to find, again, a missing mother, a biological mother that the child wants to find, and then also the daughter of another mother who was kicked out because she was not the kind of person they wanted in her house. And so it pulls into her to thinking about, well, her family and, what happened to her family and what happened to her birth mother and all this sort of stuff. So she starts investigating that as well. So I look at the stories that pull her along, and I look at the stories that interest me in terms of, well, how's she going to deal with this? How's she going to grow? What's it going to affect her? How, what are the multiple different resonances that she's going to find in her life? And I think that's kind of what's kept it interesting for me, and what, I didn't want to keep writing, that someone's murdered and she solves it. Yeah. I mean, I actually do kind of enjoy those kind of mysteries, but I was more interested in who this person is and why is she seeking the justice that she's looking for.
Yeah, so you did character development for each book. Like, you just didn't do it one time and this is Mickey and this is what you get. You did it for each book. Does that sound correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm having a little trouble hearing you. For some reason, okay. The speaker isn't as loud as it should be.
Okay.
And I don't seem to be able to. Sorry, that technical difficulties here. I can't. The volume is up as high as it's going to go.
Okay.
We'll keep it on the cats.
Okay. All right. Is this any better?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So, I was saying that you did a character development for each book, that it wasn't just a once and done, this is Mickey, what you see is what you get, that, you purposefully, had her grow and change with each storyline.
Well, yeah, again, we do. I mean, of course we do. I mean, if you look back, the person you were when you were 21 is not who you are today.
God, no.
And I think that's true of all of us.
Yeah.
And so I wanted it to be true of her as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, that's like, it's wonderful. I haven't read the first one. I've read some of the previous ones. And you can see, like, I can see the difference in her.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is something you love the most about Mickey?
That she gets to make all those snarky comments in real time, because I can spend about a week coming up with it, and I don't get to do that in real life.
Ah, she has that snarky wit, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that she's interesting. She's people like, who know me are like, well, she's nothing like you at all. And that is very true. Snark, but again, she can do it in book real time. And it's, you walk away and you think of something really, that perfect comeback, but it's too late in real life.
I hate when that happens.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. It's like, damn it.
Uh-huh.
I had said that then.
Yes.
But, and I like that she searches for justice. I like the sort of integrity that she has. Mm-hmm. About obviously she breaks the rules sometimes, but there's certain things that it's just the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. and she does that.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like the difference between legality and ethics, right? Yeah. Maybe legally it might not be a good thing to do, but ethically it is, for sure, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I won't say it, but in this book she does something that she feels is ethically complete, is right, but it's not really legal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's all right. It was great. I loved it. So tell me, is there something that you don't really like about her? Um, Something that you want her to change?
Well, obviously I'm the writer. If I want something to change in her, I could change it. Um, Not really. There's nothing,
Okay.
that she's a character that has that I've been able to write 11 books about means I have to have some sort of affinity with her and some sort of interest in her. And again, I like the mess. I like the fact that she's messy and complicated and sometimes screws things up and sometimes doesn't see the world the way as perfectly as she should, because I think that reflects who most of us are.
Yeah.
We never are as perfect as we want to be. We just have to try and do better.
Yeah, it really makes her human, it makes her very likable because she isn't perfect. You don't hate her or resent her because she is perfect.
Yeah.
She's just one of us, which is
Yeah.
awesome. So I have to ask you, you said you were nothing like Mickey. Is Mickey based on someone that you know in real life?
No.
No, no.
No, people are too messy. I mean, it's a very good piece of advice I got very early on in my writing career was don't tell me it really happened. Because that's you need to make fiction believable. And I think I based her on again a lot of the reading I was doing at the time.
Hmm.
I really have always been drawn to mystery books. Even as a kid, I like that sort of solving the puzzle, figuring out justice, and that sort of thing. And uh, so when I thought about writing, it was okay. Who are the detectives? And again, there were the examples of, like I say, V.I. Warshawski, Sarah Paretsky's detective, Kinsey Malone, Sue Grafton's detective, and multiple ones. And so I took it from that tradition of the fictional, iconic private detective, and then I mixed in, okay, let's make her a lesbian, let's put her in the South in New Orleans, and do that. But I think any trying to base a person on anyone is just too difficult,
Hmm.
and it can get you into legal trouble, and no one wants to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's for ex-presidents.
Ah, yes, I love it. So you have won several Lambda Literary Awards, and you have been nominated for numerous awards as well. Um, and were these all for the Mickey Knight series, or
Yes.
oh wow, that is great. So everyone's loving this series.
Well, I had to work until I retired. I wasn't able to, sell enough books to write full time. But, I've been lucky and I've been privileged and, maybe was at the right place at the right time for some of the things. Um, yeah, I've won 3 Lambda Awards and 8 of the books have been nominated,
Wow,
which is not a bad record. Um,
that's
but
fantastic.
also, being writing about a lesbian, and I know this is true of many of my colleagues and friends, that there was a brief moment in the 1990s or so when the New York publishers like, oh, queer books, LGBTQ is going to be the next big thing. And I actually got picked up by one of the large publishers, W.W. Norton, and they published 2 of my books. And there were a number of other writers as well. I think Catherine Forrest was picked up, and others. And it turned out we weren't, or at least that's the way my ego likes to interpret it, because they did 2 books and it was like, you didn't sell enough, and so we're not going to keep publishing you because you're not making us enough money. So I ended up going back to the small publishers, and like I say, I knew a lot of other LGBTQ writers who sort of also did that wave, and it's happened multiple times that we've been doing the next great thing and then haven't sold as much as other books do, and end up going back to some of the smaller presses that are willing to support us. And I do think that there's a fair amount of discrimination. When that book came out, the big press, yada yada yada, reviews on Maureen Corrigan of NPR and that sort of stuff. A friend of mine related to me that she went into her bookstore and said, "Hey, you have a display of New Orleans. You should put my friend's book, J.M. Redmann. It was The Intersection of Law and Desire." And the bookstore owner was like, "No, I won't have that kind of book in my store."
Wow.
And very recently, I was trying to reach out to some mystery bookstores about perhaps doing a signing. And just, within the last month or so, another bookstore came back to me and said, "Oh, her kind of book, it doesn't do well with our audience."
That's,
So yeah, there's still,
it's still out there.
It's still out there. Yeah.
That, I mean, in some ways it does surprise me, but with everything that I read on the news and what's happening and with the Supreme Court case, and it doesn't surprise me, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
and I want to make clear, I've been incredibly lucky and incredibly privileged to have the kind of career I have.
Yeah.
It has I had some of my books published in Spanish in Spain and as well as Germany, and I have been able to go over to those countries because of that. I've met a lot of incredible people like yourself because of the writing and things. So no regrets. It would have been great if I had been able to sell the way some of my other contemporaries, and the way if some of my other LGBTQ colleagues were able to have the kind of careers that other mystery writers have. Mm-hmm. But, times change slowly.
Yeah. Yeah, they do, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They definitely do. But the good news is we have listeners in Spain and Germany, so they will love to hear you. So,
I'm sorry?
I said the good news is we have listeners in Spain and Germany, so they will love to hear you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, definitely. So, I remember that some of the folks that you're talking about, like Barbara Wilson and Catherine Forrest, I think
Ellen Hart.
Yeah, they were all part of what was like Naiad Press.
Well, yes and no. Barbara Wilson and Ellen started out with Seal.
Okay.
Catherine was with Naiad. I started out with New Victoria.
I remember that one.
Yeah, I had my first 2 books with them.
Okay. And who are you with today?
Today I'm with Bold Strokes Books.
Awesome. And all of your books have been published there, so you must be happy there.
Yeah, I mean, I think they do a pretty good job. They are professional, and I mean that as a tremendous compliment, because I have worked at places, I'm not going to name names, but that it was more like, hey, we're doing it for the cause, so if we don't pay you the royalties, that's okay, right? Because this is for a cause. But it's like, look, I'm only making pennies on the hour anyway. And if you don't even pay me what you legally owe me, then that's a problem.
Yes. That is totally unprofessional and totally manipulative.
Yeah, it kind of felt like that sometimes.
Yeah.
I kind of get it. It's small, you're trying to survive, but it's also... Yeah. Treat your authors with respect. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Bold Strokes has a great reputation for doing that.
Yes.
Yeah. So also, I just want to mention, Jean, that you received a Mystery Writers Award right out of the starting gate. That must have had a tremendous impact and boost to...
Well, yes and no. No, my first 2 books... My first book, just, again, it was published by, really small lesbian press, and a few people read it. The second book actually wasn't the first book that was nominated for the Lambda Award, which I did not win. And there was actually a tie. So 2 people win, and then 3 of us lost. I was one of the 3. I tried not to take it personally.
Yeah.
But the third book, The Intersection of Law and Desire, it actually did win the Lambda Award.
Okay. And wasn't there like a Mystery Writers Award, though, that you won? In addition to the Lambda Literary Award?
Well, it was a Lambda Award for Best Lesbian. I've won the Forward Independent Book. They gave me a couple of awards. They were, a more general public mystery as opposed to focused in the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, yeah, I thought so. I thought they were more mainstream. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's great. That is great. So, when you wrote the first one, right? It sounded like you expected it to be a short story, never ever intended it to be this huge series. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So, is there more to come? Or,
Uh, Probably. I feel that it's one of the discussions I have with some of my mystery writer friends is who are doing series is where do we end the series? Do we end series? Do we just leave them open and the last book's the one that you wrote before you died? And so I feel that I certainly need to consider where do I want to leave Mickey? Because there seem to be a few people who enjoy her and want her to be fat and happy and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah.
so I do think that I have a few more in me, and I may also work at some other projects as well.
Great. Great.
Now that
Well,
I'm retired and have all this time.
yes, yes, yes. That good old retirement. I'm envious. Ah, um, but that is wonderful. Yeah, I do hope that we see more of Mickey. I really enjoy her antics, I guess.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, are you working on anything right now? That
Yeah, I am. I have a couple projects in mind, including some ideas for possible Mickey. I actually collaborated with my good friend Rob Burns, who does gay male sort of caper books, and we there's an anthology that is sort of kind of in the works, and so we had a Mickey Knight meets his miscreant gay couple who are trying to steal money from evangelicals in New Orleans as a short story. So that hopefully will be out sometime in the next year. And there are a couple other things I'm working on. At this point, I often do not talk about what I'm working on because I feel that sometimes it changes, sometimes I don't get there, and I feel sometimes I can jinx things if I put it out in the world when it's not quite real enough, and I feel I need to make things real, and then I can talk about them.
I totally understand that. Yep, I get it. I get it. So it's comforting to know that we'll be seeing at least a short story of Mickey, if not another novel in the works. So Jean, I just want to again plug your latest Mickey Knight novel called Transitory by J.M. Redmann. So listeners, go get it. It is fabulous. You will not be disappointed, and you'll probably want to read every other Mickey Knight novel. And it'll keep you company in the fall. Because there's 11 of them.
Well, thank you. Yes. Yeah, buy all of them. That will help buy cat food for my retirement. Anita, I want to thank you for doing this. I know that this is a labor of love to do this. And it takes time and effort, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for being patient, and we had to reschedule, and I appreciate that. And it's been my pleasure talking with you. And I just want to ask you if you have any parting words for our listeners today.
Read books and fight for justice and democracy.
There you go. That's all that you need, folks. Read books and fight for justice and democracy, because we're going to need that in the coming months and years. Yes, definitely. So again, J.M. Redmann, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been my pleasure. And that's all the time we have. And thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you. I have very much enjoyed this.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining Let's Talk About Books, baby. Until next time, may your journey be lighthearted, peace be plenty, and be safe, folks.